My name is Detective Pierce. That is all you need to know. I have walked into murders staged like theater, into churches that breathed, into factories that fed on ash and bone. And still, when the letter arrived, I hesitated longer than I ever had before. It was handwritten, ink smudged by a trembling hand. The address on the envelope was mine, though I hadn't given it to anyone outside the department for years. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The message was short. When the 13th hour strikes, the labyrinth will open. The city must not be allowed to follow. No name. No sender. Only a wax seal on the fold, deep crimson, pressed with a symbol that looked like overlapping clock hands, pointing in every direction at once. I burned the envelope. But I kept the letter. The labyrinth revealed itself 3 nights later. At first, I thought it was just one of those stories that collect around old cities like moss on stone. In Belwick's old quarter, beneath the abandoned Watchmakers' Guild, there were tunnels, catacombs that predated the streets above. I'd heard whispers before, strange ticking noises that carried through the cobblestones at night, bells tolling from nowhere, people vanishing after going down for dares. Urban folklore, nothing more. But at midnight, while walking the empty square, I heard it, a bell, deep and sonorous, tolling once. Then again. I counted, each note digging into the air like a nail. 11, 12, and then 13. The sound cracked the night. My watch froze. The street lamps flickered and went out, leaving the square bathed only in moonlight. And there, where the old guild doors had been boarded for decades, I saw light, thin, golden, seeping from the cracks like the glow of candles. The labyrinth had opened. The first step was the hardest. The wooden boards came away as though they wanted me inside. Dust clung to my coat, and the air smelled of oil and rust. Beyond lay a stairwell, stone walls sweating with damp, descending into blackness. I lit my lantern. Its flame stuttered but held. The stairwell spiraled endlessly, down past brick, then stone, then something older still. Carvings lined the walls, gears, cogs, sundials, and broken clock faces. The further I went, the louder the ticking became. Not from one clock, but from thousands, each out of sync. The sound built like a storm, rattling inside my skull. At last, the stairs ended. The hall I stepped into was vast, domed, lit not by fire but by clockwork. Chandeliers of brass and steel hung above, each gear turning with a slow, patient rhythm. Walls were lined with clocks, grandfather clocks, pocket watches, pendulums, sundials illuminated by artificial light. None agreed on the time. In the center of the chamber was a door. It was not wood, nor stone, nor metal. It was made entirely of clock faces, all fused together, their hands twitching violently. The surface pulsed like a heartbeat. And above it, carved into the arch, words stretched in Latin. Tempus devorat omnia. Time devours all. As I drew closer, the hands aligned for a fraction of a second, forming a single time, 1300 hours. The door opened. The labyrinth lived up to its name. Passages twisted like intestines, branching and doubling back. Rooms opened into one another with no sense of logic. Some were lined with mirrors, others with gears the size of houses, slowly grinding as though chewing something unseen. The air was heavy, damp with the smell of oil and dust. And always, the ticking. Sometimes it was far away. Sometimes it was right beside me. I left chalk marks on the walls, but the labyrinth shifted. When I turned back, the chalk was gone, or else the wall itself had vanished. I was not walking stone, I was walking memory. The first body I found was seated in a chair. A man, perhaps 40, in a suit 2 decades out of style. His skin was pale, waxen, but not decayed. He looked as though he had only just sat down. In his hands he held a broken pocket watch. His eyes were open, glassy, staring at nothing. Pinned to his chest was a card. A name, written in ink, Thomas Vale. I left him behind. But not before noticing the detail that chilled me more than the corpse itself. His watch had stopped at 1300 hours. The second body was worse. It hung from the ceiling by chains of gears and wire, suspended like a puppet. Its face had been removed entirely, replaced by a clock face fused into the flesh, its hands twitching toward 1300 hours again and again. Another card. Another name. Clara Vale. Wife. Sister. Daughter. I didn't know. But the implication was clear. The labyrinth catalogued them. One by one, it wrote its own record of time through flesh. I pressed onward, lantern shaking in my hand. Hours passed. Or minutes. I could not tell. My own watch had stopped. The clocks around me shifted constantly, marking hours that didn't exist. Sometimes they moved backward. Sometimes forward. Sometimes they froze. And then I heard it. A sound beneath the ticking. A dragging step. I pressed myself against the wall, lantern dimmed. Something came around the corner. At first, I thought it was a man. Tall, gaunt, dressed in a long coat that dragged against the floor. But his head was wrong. Too long. Too heavy. When he turned, the light caught his face. It wasn't a face. It was a clock. Glass cracked, gears turning beneath, hands spinning wildly in every direction. A mouth split the surface like a fracture, ticking with every movement. It carried no lantern, no weapon, only a ring of keys that clattered against its hip, dozens of them, none alike. The warden of hours. It stopped, tilted its head, as though listening. I held my breath. The ticking grew louder, deafening. Every clock on the wall turned toward 1300 hours. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would hear. And then, the warden moved on. Its steps dragged into the distance, swallowed by the labyrinth's throat. I exhaled slowly. But I knew one thing. I had not been spared. I had been measured. And soon, it would return. That was when I reached the chamber of pendulums. A vast cavern, its ceiling lost to shadow, filled with pendulums swinging on chains thicker than tree trunks. Each one was carved of black iron, their tips sharp as blades. They swung in perfect unison, slow, deliberate, slicing the air. Beneath them, the floor was marked with grooves, deep as graves. In the center of the chamber was something worse. A clock, but not like any I had seen before. Its face was a spiral, numbers twisting inward endlessly. No hour, no minute, no second, only descent. And carved into its base was a single phrase. The 13th hour is not forgiven. The spiral hands moved once. A jolt passed through the chamber. Every pendulum swung faster. I realized then that the labyrinth wasn't just built to confuse. It was built to count. To measure every soul that entered, to record every death. And I had just entered its ledger. The pendulum swung faster. My lantern flickered. And somewhere behind me, the warden's steps returned. The pendulum swung faster. At first, they had moved with the patience of centuries, slow arcs cutting the air like whispers. Now they raced, their edges glinting in the lantern light, blades suspended on chains as thick as execution ropes. They swung so quickly that the cavern filled with their violent rhythm, a ticking made flesh. I stayed rooted where I stood, between their sweeping arcs. One wrong step and I would be split open, not by time metaphorical, but by its steel incarnation. Behind me, the steps returned. That dragging gait, steady, unhurried, boots scraping across stone. The warden of ours was coming. I held my lantern close, though its light now seemed pitiful against the immensity of the chamber. The pendulums hissed as they cut the air, gusts of wind tugging at my coat. My path forward was through them. My path back was sealed by the warden. I chose forward. The first pendulum nearly ended me. It sliced down, barely missing my shoulder, its chain shrieking above. I ducked low, sliding between the arcs, my lantern flame fluttering dangerously. The second pendulum came immediately, swinging faster than seemed possible for a weight so enormous. I dropped flat to the floor, its tip grazing inches above my skull. The grooves in the stone beneath me told their story. I was not the first to attempt this passage. And not all had succeeded. The air filled with steel and shadow. I wove between pendulums, breath ragged, timing each movement with desperate precision. The sound was unbearable. The rush of air, the thunder of chains, the endless ticking. Halfway through, I heard the warden enter the chamber. Its clock face glowed faintly in the dark, fractured glass catching the light. It did not hurry. It simply walked, dragging its coat across the grooves, its ring of keys clattering with each step. The pendulums did not touch it. They swung, but when they reached its body, they slowed, their arcs faltering as though unwilling to strike. Time itself bent to let it pass. I moved faster. When at last I stumbled free of the pendulums, the chamber opened into another hall, narrow, lined with shelves. But these were not shelves for books. They held clocks, hundreds of them, stacked like volumes in a library. Each one bore a name. Brass plaques nailed to their bases: Isabel Marin, 1882. Jonas Blythe, 1911. Samuel Rook, 1935. The names stretched back centuries, every decade marked. Each clock was wound, ticking faintly, their hands inching toward 1300 hours. I touched one. My finger came away bloody. The clock had teeth where its rim should have been, small and sharp, as though it had been gnawed from the inside. Behind me, the pendulum slowed. The warden's steps echoed closer. I ducked into the aisles, weaving between shelves, trying to lose myself among the endless names. But the ticking betrayed me. Every clock turned its face as I passed, its hands twitching violently, drawing the warden nearer. I crouched behind a row, lantern doused. The dark pressed heavy, but I dared not breathe too loudly. The warden entered the library. Its glow lit the shelves faintly, glinting off brass and glass. The keys at its side clattered as it moved, deliberate, patient. It stopped at one clock, running its long, skeletal fingers across the plaque. A low groan issued from its chest, not words, but something older, the creak of wood and the grinding of gears. The clock's hands shivered, then stilled. The warden moved on. I realized then what it was doing. It was checking the clocks, ensuring each remained wound, each remained loyal to the 13th hour. And I realized something worse. There would be one with my name. I searched quickly, silently, fingers running across plaques. Vale. Marin. Blythe. So many names I did not know, each claimed by the labyrinth, each reduced to nothing but ticking machinery. And then I saw it. Pierce. The clock was small, a pocket watch sealed in a glass case. Its plaque was blank at first, then, as I stared, letters seared themselves into the brass. Detective Pierce. The watch trembled inside the case, its hands twitching, then moving with slow certainty toward 1300 hours. I reached for it. The glass burned. My skin seared where I touched it, the watch screaming in a pitch beyond sound, vibrating until the shelves shook. The warden froze. It turned. Its cracked clock face tilted, glowing eyes scanning the aisles. The keys rattled, each one suddenly alive, twitching like insects on a string. It began to walk toward me. I ripped the case open. The watch fell into my palm, burning against my skin. The moment I touched it, my vision split. I saw myself standing there, crouched among shelves, but also saw myself suspended from chains like Clara Vale, my face replaced by a clock. Saw myself seated in a chair with open eyes like Thomas. Saw myself lying in a grave carved in the grooves beneath the pendulums. Every possibility. Every ending. The watch ticked faster. My chest constricted, my lungs turning to stone. My pulse matched its rhythm until I could not tell which was which. The warden was nearly upon me. Its mouth opened, gears grinding, a soundless word emerging. Time. I lifted the watch. And I threw it. It shattered against the stone. The sound was like a gunshot. Every clock in the hall froze, their ticking silenced. The warden screamed, not with voice, but with a seismic groan, the grinding collapse of centuries. Its glass face cracked further, gears spilling like blood. The shelves shook. The clocks burst, one after another, shattering into dust. Time itself fractured. The hall warped, walls twisting inward, corridors splitting into impossible angles. I ran. The labyrinth changed as I fled. Rooms bled into one another. Pendulums swung where no ceiling should have held them. Stairwells led both up and down, their steps folding like paper. Clocks rained from above, smashing on the stone. And always behind me, the sound, not ticking now, but grinding, the broken gait of the warden as it hunted, limping but unrelenting. I burst into a chamber unlike the others. Round, domed, its floor a mosaic of shattered glass. In the center stood a clock tower, miniature, perhaps 15 feet tall, its spire broken, its bell cracked. Chains wrapped its base, holding it fast. Upon its face, the hands pointed not to 1300 hours, but to something else entirely. 1400 hours. The hour that should not exist. The chains rattled as I approached, humming faintly. The mosaic floor trembled beneath my boots. This was no ordinary piece of the labyrinth. This was its heart. And I had broken the seal that kept it bound. The warden arrived at the doorway, fractured face glowing faintly in the gloom. It raised its hand, keys jangling, pointing toward the tower. Its mouth split wider, and in a voice like every clock striking at once, it spoke for the first time in words I understood. The 14th must not toll. The chains rattled harder. The tower's bell groaned. And as the warden staggered toward me, I realized what the labyrinth had been built to contain. Not just memory. Not just names. But an hour that had no place in this world. The bell stirred. Its cracked surface vibrated with a sound lower than thunder, deeper than anything human ears were meant to endure. The chains wrapped around the miniature tower shuddered, scraping against the mosaic floor, sparks leaping where steel ground against stone. The warden reached for me. Its skeletal hand extended, claws clicking, the glow in its fractured face brighter than before. The gears in its chest spun frantically, teeth grinding against one another, smoke curling from its ribs. The 14th. It rasped, voice of rust and iron. Must not toll. I took a step back. My boots sank into the glass mosaic, shards cracking beneath my weight. The bell groaned again, louder this time, the pitch climbing until my bones hummed with it. Something inside me moved with it. The 14th hour. I don't know how I knew, but I did. It wasn't knowledge so much as infection, the way a fever grants visions, the way a dream tells truths you never wanted. The labyrinth had been built not merely as a prison of time, not only a maze for the lost. It was a lock. And the lock was failing. The warden was not its master. It was its jailer. and I had broken the seal. The bell quivered. The hands on its fractured clock face spun wildly, twitching forward, then back, then forward again. Each motion was wrong, skipping seconds, skipping hours, sometimes skipping altogether. The sound it made was unbearable. Not ticking now, not ringing, but skipping, like the stutter of a dying man's breath. The warden staggered, clutching its chest. The cracks in its glass face deepened. "You are not written," it croaked. "You were not measured." Its keys rattled, leaping from its belt as though alive. They hovered in the air, suspended by invisible chains, each one trembling violently. Then they shot forward, flying at me like knives. I dove behind the broken spire. The keys embedded themselves in the mosaic floor, sinking deep as though the glass were water. Each one vibrated, glowing faintly, before vanishing into the cracks. The bell rang once. Not loud. Just once. The entire labyrinth shifted. The walls warped inward, corridors shriveling, staircases curling like paper burned by flame. The pendulums screamed in their chambers, swinging wildly, chains snapping as they broke free and crashed into walls. Clocks shattered by the hundreds, their fragments raining like hail. And in the heart of it, the tower strained against its chains. The warden screamed, its voice now clearly words. "Not again! Not again!" It lunged at me, claws raking the spire, sparks flying. Its fractured face leaned close, glowing eyes burning into me. "You would unmake the measure," it said, "for a name already written." It meant me. It meant the plaque I had seen. I shoved against the tower, desperate, foolish. My hands burned against the chains, but I pulled anyway. They vibrated, groaned, then cracked. One link snapped like bone. The warden shrieked. Its body convulsed, gears vomiting from its chest, smoke pouring from its mouth. It struck me. The blows sent me across the chamber. I hit the mosaic floor hard, glass cutting into my back, my lantern shattering beside me. Darkness flooded the room, broken only by the glow of the warden's ruined face and the faint shimmer of the 14th hour's chains. I coughed blood, vision spinning. The warden staggered toward me. "You break what cannot be broken," it hissed. "The 14th devours. The 14th erases." Behind it, the bell groaned again. Something emerged. Not a figure. Not a shadow. But a shape. A distortion, as though the air itself had been carved wrongly, bent into angles that could not exist. The space around the tower rippled, folding in upon itself. The bell cracked further, its soundless note filling the chamber until even thought felt drowned. The warden dropped to its knees. Its hands clutched at its broken chest, gears spilling, clock face splintering. "It wakes," it moaned. "And I am unmade." It looked at me, for the first time not as prey, not as a trespasser, but as something else. "Run," it said. The tower split. The chains broke all at once, snapping with thunder, whipping across the chamber. The bell crashed downward, smashing through the mosaic floor, tearing open a pit that had no bottom. And from that pit came silence. Not the silence of absence. Not emptiness. But a silence so dense it pressed on the skin, filled the lungs, choked the breath. The silence of an hour that had no place in the world. The 14th hour had begun to toll. I ran. There was no choice. The warden collapsed behind me, its body scattering into fragments of brass and bone, its keys clattering into the pit. The chamber folded inward, walls curving like liquid, corridors bending into spirals that led both forward and back. I ran through stairwells that inverted themselves, through halls that shrank to the width of coffins. My boots broke through glass floors into others below, each level bleeding into the next. And all the while, the silence grew. It devoured the ticking. It devoured the pendulum's swing. It devoured even the sound of my breath, until I could no longer hear myself panting. The labyrinth was ending. Or beginning. I stumbled into a final hall. Narrow. Endless. Its walls lined with mirrors. But the mirrors did not show me. Each one showed a different version of myself, in different endings. Some hanging from chains with clock faces. Some buried beneath pendulums. Some standing triumphant, lantern in hand, the labyrinth burning behind me. And some, gone entirely. Blank mirrors. No Pierce at all. I staggered down the hall, watching myself die 100 ways, survive a dozen others, and vanish more times than either. At the far end stood a door. Wooden. Ordinary. But on it, carved deep, was a single inscription. 14. The 14th. And the silence pressed harder, pulling me toward it. The door waited. Ordinary wood. Cracked paint. A brass handle dulled by centuries. After the monstrous warden, after the bell's shattering toll, after the labyrinth tearing itself apart, the simplicity of that door was almost cruel. Behind me, the mirrors still stretched endlessly, their frames trembling. In them I saw the dozens of versions of myself, twitching, flickering, as though they too were waiting to see if I would open it. I touched the handle. Cold. Not metallic cold, not the frost of winter or the chill of stone, but the cold of absence, the cold that comes when something is not there and never was. I turned it. The door opened without resistance. And silence swallowed everything. Inside was no hall. No chamber. No gearwork or pendulum. It was a void. A pale, endless expanse, neither white nor gray but something in between, like faded parchment soaked too long in water. There was no ceiling, no floor, and yet I stood on something, invisible but solid beneath my boots. My breath left no echo. The door closed behind me, though I had not touched it. I was alone. Or so I thought. A ticking began. One tick. Then silence. Another tick. Then silence again. Not rhythm. Not a clock's heartbeat. But an uneven, broken ticking, like a dying metronome. Each tick came from a different direction, first behind me, then above, then far off to the left. I turned, but there was nothing. Until the third tick. Then I saw him. A figure. Distant. Standing on nothing. Tall. Thin. Dressed in rags of black cloth that fluttered though there was no wind. His face hidden behind a cracked mask, porcelain, with no mouth, only a single hole where the left eye should be. The figure tilted its head. Another tick. And suddenly it was closer. I stepped back. My boots struck the invisible floor, but I nearly fell, because for a second there was nothing beneath me, then solidity returned. Another tick. The figure was closer still. I could see the cracks in the mask now, running like veins across porcelain. The hole where the left eye should have been was deep, black, swallowing all light. Another tick. Closer. I reached for the revolver at my hip. My hand closed around the grip, but when I drew it, it was gone. The holster was empty. Another tick. He was right before me. The figure leaned down, towering, its head tilting until the mask nearly touched my own face. I could see myself reflected in the porcelain, small, broken, frightened. Then the hole where its eye should have been widened. Not opening, widening. Stretching. Tearing across the mask like a wound. And from within came no sound, but a silence deeper than the rest. A silence that pressed on my skull until I felt my thoughts screaming. The figure whispered without a mouth. The 14th. And then it touched me. The world split. Not broke, split. Like a photograph torn in two. One half of the pale void slid away, replaced with something else. I stood in a carnival. The drowned carnival. Not the one I had visited before. Not wet planks and broken rides. But a carnival alive, its lights glowing, its tents full, its midway crowded with faceless figures drifting like smoke. Calliope music played, warped and cracked, each note stretched too long, cut too short. I staggered, disoriented. The masked figure was gone. But the ticking remained. It echoed from every booth, every ride, every shadow. A dozen clocks, all broken, all off by seconds. And overhead, a Ferris wheel turned, its spokes bent like broken bones, its cars empty except for shadows that leaned too far forward, watching me. I pushed through the crowd. The faceless figures brushed against me, their bodies cold and weightless, dissolving into mist when touched. They whispered without mouths, voices like fluttering pages. You were not meant to come. You opened the 14th. You will not leave. I broke free into an open space. A tent stood before me. The big top. Its fabric was tattered, wet, sagging under invisible weight. The entrance hung open, darkness spilling from within. And above it a banner. The 14th hour. The letters shimmered, fading in and out, as though undecided whether to exist. I stepped forward. The ticking grew louder. And inside the tent, I knew something waited. Something I had not been meant to see. Something that even the warden had feared. I stood at the entrance, my hand brushing the wet fabric. It clung to me, cold as flesh. The whispers of the faceless crowd faded. Behind me, the carnival dissolved, booze rotting, rides sinking into water, lights flickering out. The tent was all that remained. And I stepped inside. The fabric clung as I entered, wet canvas brushing my shoulders like skin. The air inside was colder still, sharp as metal, dry as dust. My breath came out in clouds, though there was no warmth in me to make them. The tent was vast, far larger than it had seemed from outside. Rows of seats curved around in a circle, their wood warped, their velvet cushions gnawed by unseeing teeth. But no audience sat within them. Only shadows stretched thin, draped across the benches like coats left behind. At the center stood a stage. No boards, no curtains. Just a circle of dirt, packed hard, wet as clay. And upon it, a clock. Not a standing clock, not a grandfather or tower. But a clock face, vast, horizontal, embedded in the ground itself. Its glass cracked, its hands twitching, dragging themselves an inch forward then shuddering back. Each motion echoed, not as a tick but as a scream held deep in bone. I stood at the edge. The smell hit me first. Ash. Rust. Paper burned until it was only black dust. Then a voice. Not from the clock. From above. You break the circle. I looked up. The figure in the porcelain mask was there again, descending slowly, as if lowered by strings I could not see. His robes trailed like torn banners. The single black eye hole widened and narrowed, pulsing with each second. He hovered above the clock. You are not of the hour, he whispered. Yet you stand at its mouth. The glass beneath him cracked further. A hand pressed against it from below. Not a clock hand, a human hand, gray and withered, nails like shards of bone. It clawed once, twice, then pressed flat against the barrier. Another hand followed. Then another. Dozens. They pushed. Scratched. Pounded. The clock's face bulged upward, ready to burst. The masked figure lowered until he stood upon the glass. He raised his arms, robes spreading like wings. The 14th rises. Time shall be eaten. The second between seconds shall become all. The glass shattered. The sound was not of breaking glass. It was the tearing of 1,000 calendars, the splitting of stone, the scream of every bell tolling at once. Shards spun upward, slicing the air, dissolving before they struck. And from beneath came the bodies. They did not climb. They were pulled. Like puppets, dragged upward by invisible strings. Dozens. Hundreds. Faces twisted, mouths stretched in silent howls. They wore no clothes, only skin marked with clock faces, carved into flesh, each frozen at different hours. They fell to their knees before the masked figure. And then their mouths opened wide. Sound came. A single note, drawn out, either song nor scream. It vibrated through my bones, pressed against my skull, made my teeth ache. The masked figure turned to me. "You have no hour. You are not written. You are ash adrift." His hand lifted. The chorus grew louder. The clock faces carved in the skin of his followers began to turn, hands twitching wildly. Time spun, reversed, halted. Seconds bled into each other. My vision doubled, then trebled. I saw myself in 3 places at once, one standing, one kneeling, one screaming. I staggered. My knees struck the ground. The dirt was warm now, pulsing, breathing. The masked figure bent low, his mask nearly touching mine again. "The 14th has chosen," I whispered hoarsely. "Chosen who?" The black hole of his eye stretched wide, and within it I saw names. Thousands. Scrawled in burning ink. Crossed out. Erased. Then, at the very bottom, one not yet crossed. Pierce. The chorus broke into laughter. Not joyous, not cruel, worse. Indifferent. Endless. I tore myself backward. The dirt clung to me, pulling like tar, but I fought free, crawling toward the tent's edge. My hand touched canvas, wet, cold, clinging. I forced myself through, and the tent was gone. I stood once more in the void. No carnival. No shadows. No masked figure. Only the endless pale expanse. But something had followed me. The ticking. Only now it was not broken. Not uneven. It was perfect. Steady. 1 second after another. I realized what it meant. The 14th hour had begun. I staggered, breathing hard, my hand pressed to my chest as though I could hold time back from seeping into me. The door behind me had vanished. There was no exit. Only the ticking. And far, far off, a light. A doorway? No. Not a doorway. A clock face. Suspended in the void, vast as a building. Its hands pointed not to 12, but to 14. It was waiting for me. And I knew, if I reached it, there would be no coming back. But if I did not, the world outside would collapse into this place. The choice was not mine. It had already been written. The ticking followed me as I walked. Not from behind, not from ahead. From within. Every step I took, a second passed. Every breath I drew, a hand moved forward on some unseen dial. The pale void stretched endless, but the great clock face grew nearer. It floated in the dark like a severed moon, suspended on nothing, glowing faintly with its own cold light. Its hands pointed not to 12, but to 14. There was no minute hand, no second hand. Only the 2, each thick as towers, trembling with restraint. I stopped, breath ragged, sweat freezing on my skin. My legs shook. My body wanted to collapse, to let this void swallow me. But the ticking would not let me. It pulled me forward, step by step. When I reached the base of the clock, I realized it was not suspended. It grew from the ground itself. Its rim fused into the earth, as if the void had sprouted it. and at its base a door. A small wooden door, cracked and splintered, a single brass handle dull with age. Nothing else. I touched it. It opened without sound. Inside was not the mechanism of a clock. It was a corridor. Narrow, low, lined with shelves. On each shelf stood clocks of every kind. Pocket watches. Grandfather clocks. Mantle clocks. Cuckoo clocks. Hourglasses without sand. All ticking. All at once. I stepped inside. The moment I did, the door slammed behind me. The corridor stretched on forever. The shelves leaned, groaning under the weight of their burden. I passed them one by one, my eyes darting, my ears pounding with the layered ticks. Until I noticed something. Each clock bore a name. Not engraved on the case. Carved into the glass. I leaned close to the first. The name was in English. A man's name. James Rowley. The second. A woman's. Anne-Marie Dubois. The third. A child's. Carl Fisher. Each clock bore a different name, etched deep, the glass spiderweb from the pressure. Some names I recognized. Historical. Forgotten. Famous. Unknown. And then I saw it. My own. Pierce. Carved across the face of a small brass watch. Its hands trembled at 11:59. I reached out. My fingertip brushed the glass. The watch leapt. It rattled violently, the hands spinning, the ticking erupting into a roar that filled the corridor. My ears bled. I stumbled back. And from the shadows between shelves, the masked figure emerged. He walked with slow, deliberate steps, robes dragging across the floor. His porcelain mask gleamed, the single black eye hole staring without blinking. "You see it now," he whispered. "The library of hours. Every soul a clock. Every breath a second." He lifted one hand. A long finger, pale and jointless, tapped the glass of my clock. The hands froze. "You are unwritten. Yet here you are." His head tilted. A contradiction. I forced my voice steady. "What happens if the clock breaks?" The masked figure leaned close. "Then the soul is unmoored. Time devours it. The name burns away." He gestured to the shelves. I saw them now, clocks shattered, faces blank, names erased into smooth glass. Silent. Thousands. Tens of thousands. The silence between their broken ticks was suffocating. "Why me?" I rasped. The masked figure spread his arms. "Because you entered. Because you opened the door. Because the 14th must feed." He stepped back, gesturing toward the end of the corridor. There, another door waited. Not wood. Iron. Scarred. Scorched. From beyond it, a pulse. Like a heartbeat. The ticking grew louder, sinking with it. "The 14th wakes," he intoned. "You will be its vessel." The iron door swung open. And what lay beyond was no chamber. It was the inside of the clock itself. Vast gears turned overhead, teeth grinding against teeth, sparks of light bleeding from their collisions. Chains swung like pendulums, each link larger than my body. The air was thick with oil and dust, burning my throat with every breath. At the center stood the mechanism. A heart of black iron, throbbing, pulsing, leaking light not gold but pale and gray. The 14th hour. It was alive. I stumbled closer, though every part of me screamed to flee. My legs moved without my will, drawn like filings to a magnet. The masked figure walked beside me, silent, waiting. At the heart's base, I saw them. Bodies. Piled high, fused into the mechanism. Their faces frozen in screams, their flesh twisted into the gears, their limbs serving as levers and rods. And their eyes, wide, alive, staring. Each blinked in perfect unison. My stomach lurched. The masked figure lifted his hand. The 14th claims. The heart pulsed once, hard. The entire chamber shook. Gears screamed. Chains snapped. And light burst outward, striking me full in the chest. I fell. Not backward. Not forward. Down. Through endless shelves. Through corridors of clocks. Through the void itself. I landed on stone. I was back. The labyrinth. The halls of clocks. The carnival of shadows. All of it at once. And the ticking. Always the ticking. The masked figure's voice echoed all around me. You are chosen. You are vessel. When the 14th tolls, it shall toll through you. I clutched my chest. Beneath my hand I felt it. Not my heartbeat. The clock. Ticking. Steady. Relentless. The world around me shattered. The void dissolved. The shelves collapsed. The carnival burned. I was standing once more in the real world. The city. Night. The clock tower above the square struck midnight. But not 12. 14. The bell tolled. Once. Twice. Each toll made the air shimmer. Windows cracked. Lights blew out. People screamed in the streets, clutching their heads. Time itself stuttered. Carriages froze mid-turn. Raindrops hung suspended in the air. Conversations halted midward. The 14th had come through. Through me. And I knew then that this case was not finished. Not buried in the labyrinth. It had followed me. It would follow always. I whispered, though no one could hear me. My name is Detective Pierce. And I am already running out of time.